Welcome back to First Issues. We continue our series on lifestyle disorders, formerly known as non-communicable diseases, with Dr. Kiran Bhagat. In a previous episode, the good doctor spoke about chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases as a common lung disease causing restricted airflow to the lungs, leading to breathing problems. Tonight, Dr. Bhagat discusses dementia, one other lifestyle disorder that is on the rise. Doctor, thank you so much for coming back on First Issues. We're back again, continuing our lifestyle disorders series, and today we're going to be discussing dementia. What is dementia?
So dementia is actually, it's a bit like cancer. It's a very powerful word, and it connotes or denotes to the public out there something horrific. It basically is a gradual loss of what we call in English cognitive function. So you gradually lose memory. So you face recognition, short-term, long-term memory, speech. You're lost for words. Now, people out there that are listening are probably saying, oh, I have all these things, suddenly you're in the middle of a sentence and you've forgotten what you've said, or you can't find the right word, or you've often come a situation where you meet somebody at a party, they know you can't recognize them. You recognize the face, but you don't know what the name is. Or somebody's told you something like a telephone number and you've just walked out the door and you've forgotten the telephone number. So these are common short-term memory things, and that's not dementia. Dementia is a persistent, consistent loss of a particular function, higher function. So recognizing the directions to get home, recognizing where the supermarket is, recognizing eventually there's loss of recognition of your spouse, or your children, yourself, your profession. And this is actually as a result of a gradual, to put it very simply, a gradual shrinkage of the brain. It's a gradual destruction of the brain. What are the commonest lifestyle diseases that causes destruction in the brain? Well, it's got to do firstly with the food we eat. We know that there's a rise in blood pressure amongst our community, and blood pressure has got to do with the lack of exercise, it's excessive salt intake, it's processed foods, it's obesity. And so we know that all these things cause the brain insults. So we know that sugar is an insult to the brain. We know that very high blood pressure that's uncontrolled is an insult to the brain. We know that uncontrolled diabetes causes, if you like, sugar damage in the brain. Lack of exercise also results in poor blood flow to the brain. Lack of sleep, because you're stressed and you're overworked, causes the brain not to relax and to refresh at night. Stress causes an elevated stress chemistry, cortisol, adrenaline. All these things we now know have an impact on the brain, if you like, shrinking and degenerating into pathology. The commonest type of dementia is a dementia called Alzheimer's disease, which is basically where there is a deposition of certain types of toxic proteins in the brain called amyloid, and we know we can actually diagnose it very early now, and then it has become almost an ethical issue where do we do the blood test in a 23 or 24-year-old to say you're at risk in the future because this is hereditary, and there's an ethical concern about doing these blood tests because we now know that, particularly with lifestyle diseases, that dementia starts 20-30 years prior to the actual presentation of dementia. So it starts in your 20s and 30s. The brain begins to change because you are exposing yourself to those lifestyle conditions in your teenage years. You either take too much alcohol, or you eat too much sugar, or you take too many fizzy drinks, or you don't exercise, you don't sleep too much, you take tobacco, you take your vaping. So all these lifestyle issues that we're talking about have an acute impact suddenly and a long-term impact. So the medium-term impact is the diabetes, is the blood pressure, is the obesity, but the long-term impact as you go into, if you like, the late afternoon of your life is dementia. And unfortunately, as I've said, it takes 20-30 years for it to present. So by the time somebody says, my mom is now forgetting, my mom walks about aimlessly on her street, goes out the door and is found in the shopping center, it's often a little bit late for us to manage that dementia, other than a more solidified family network in terms of making sure they're always accompanied. That's the end stage of dementia. What we're trying to do with the lifestyle issues is prevention. But the principal concern with dementia is that it is significantly reversible, if not preventable, by lifestyle measures.
So
what is the cure? You've just been talking about prevention. So
dementia, because there is a rising number, I shouldn't say fortunately, but as a result of the rising numbers in the more industrialized countries, they're putting more money into the research. And so we are beginning to see, just actually only in 2024, some very exciting news about how we can actually, for example, use vaccines as a prevention. We now know the inflammation that goes on in the brain. We now know the protein that is deposited in the brain, and clever companies are developing vaccines that actually prevent the deposition in the brain of these particular proteins and the inflammations, and the results are looking very positive in terms of prevention. Just like we use vaccines for prevention of measles and mumps and soon malaria, there are going to be vaccines that come out. There are certain drugs that are currently undergoing trial that are also very exciting in terms of dissolving, if you like, the protein in the brain. And so there is lots of promising work that's going to come out. So the key for those that are listening there who have perhaps a family history of dementia, who have had grannies or granddads who've lost their minds, if you like, prevention, go upstream and look at the things that you're doing to yourself. Look in the mirror and look at yourself. Measure your waist circumference, measure your blood pressure, look at what you're actually feeding yourself, what you put in your shopping basket as a preventative tool. The same old story that we're seeing every time. It's exercise, it's diet, it's avoiding the processed foods, it's cutting the sugar, it's avoiding excess, if not stopping alcohol, it's not taking tobacco, it's not taking those illicit substances.
We continue the series again next time when we discuss cancer as one of the most common lifestyle disorders in Botswana. With that, we have come to the end of tonight's installment of First Issues. Have yourselves a pleasant evening. Good night.